Welcome to Energy Independence Magazine. I'm Sean Reynolds. Today on our program, I'll be speaking with Vicki Hightower, Chief Deputy District Attorney for the County of Riverside, about the serious issue of workmen's compensation fraud, and more specifically, premium fraud, also known as employer fraud, the costliest form of workmen's compensation abuse, contributing to over $7 billion a year nationally in lost revenue. On our panel this afternoon, we will be joined by Jim Rush of the IBEW Local 440 to hear how his organization is affected by what has been termed as the fastest growing segment of insurance fraud in the nation. Welcome, Ms. Hightower. Welcome, Jim Rush.
Thanks for having me.
Ms. Hightower, your office is charged with the task of investigating and prosecuting premium insurance fraud. Can you, before we get into that, can you tell us how big a problem this is in Southern California or the Inland Empire, and what resources your office has in prosecuting these?
Absolutely. I can tell you that throughout the state of California, just cash paying of employees by employers costs the state between $800 million and $1.2 billion a year in lost revenue. So it's a significant issue. My office has partnered with the Department of Insurance, and we have worked together to combat this issue in the Inland Empire. We established the Inland Empire Premium Fraud Task Force. Members of the task force are investigators from my office, investigators from the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office, investigators from the Department of Insurance, the Employment Development Department, and the Franchise Tax Board. And so all these partners work together to discover premium insurance fraud and also to investigate it. So significant resources. We have the task force, and then we also have 2 additional investigators who are within my office who investigate these cases on their own. And then of course our prosecutors are assigned to prosecute the cases.
Do you have a backlog of cases right now?
You know, no, not really. Our investigators, especially with the Premium Fraud Task Force, they're very efficient in getting the cases worked up and filed and prosecuted. And then our deputy district attorneys who are assigned to the unit are also very efficient with moving the cases forward and resolving them. So that is one of our, I believe, most efficient units in my division.
So the offenders right now, they're being prosecuted.
Yes.
Well, so now I understand there's essentially 4 ways that a premium fraud is perpetrated. So could you give me some examples of those?
Sure. The easiest way is to simply not have workers' compensation insurance. And as I'm sure people in the construction and industry would know, that if you don't pay for workers' compensation insurance, you have an unfair competitive advantage over the people who do. So that's the simplest way to commit premium fraud. Also, another way to do it is an employer who misstates or misclassifies the employees. For instance, if you own a roofing company yet all you have are clerical employees, your workers' compensation insurance is going to be much lower. You can also commit the premium fraud by underreporting your payroll. Cash pay, paying under the table, that's part of the underground economy. That decreases your workers' compensation premiums. And then finally, you can do what we call XMOD fraud. Your workers' compensation insurance is based in part on your experience modification. Just as if your auto insurance is going to go up the more auto accidents you have. That's what XMOD fraud is. You lie about the number of industrial issues or accidents that you have, or the number of claims that you've made. Mm-hmm. We see that happening. We see companies changing their names frequently and jumping around from insurer to insurer, provider to provider, to avoid the XMOD.
Vicki, there are a lot of cases of premium fraud in the construction building industry. Why is that?
Well, we see a lot of premium fraud in areas that require insurance certificates in order to work. And so in the construction industry, you're going to have to need a certificate of insurance to work in order to get an unfair advantage over your competitors. If you commit premium fraud in order to get that insurance certificate, that's when you're going to do it. Your premium is based, again, in part on what type of work you're doing. So the more dangerous the work, electrical workers, roofers, that type of thing, the higher the premium is going to be. And if the higher your premium is, the more motivation you have to cheat.
For abuse.
Right.
Now, Jim, this is why you're here. Now, you represent the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers here in the Inland Empire. How is this affecting what you do?
Well, as Vicki touched on, with the premium fraud that is going on within the whole underground economy, it gives contractors an unfair advantage. They're able to come in lower on their bids, and essentially by cheating, they're winning these bids and winning these jobs. And 9 times out of 10, if you're cheating at the premium fraud level on your workman's comp insurance, you're going to be cheating in other aspects of that job, whether it's cash payout to your employees. There's oftentimes, if it's a prevailing wage job, they'll pay them all on the check, make them give all their money back afterwards. Basically go to the bank with them, make them cash their money, get kickbacks.
Really?
They could be cheating on the install that they're doing, cutting corners so you can get an unsafe product essentially from what's being built. I mean, usually these cheaters, they'll cheat any which way possible. Some of our contractors have had to come in and take over projects because they weren't able to complete the project or they weren't able to finish the project for various reasons, not necessarily premium fraud, but there was other reasons why a cheating contractor wasn't able to finish out the job, and then we bring our contractors in to clean up the mess.
Now, Vicki, can you go over how premium fraud is investigated? What are the red flags that your office sees?
Most of our investigations begin with a complaint from the public. We reach out to unions and to the industry representatives because they're our eyes and ears out there. So a competitor who is being woefully underbid in a competitive bidding situation, he's got a pretty good idea that the person who won the bid is probably cheating. And so that's how a lot of our complaints start. We also get complaints from the special investigative units of the insurance departments. For instance, we get claims to the EDD, the Employment Development Department. Someone applies to EDD for unemployment benefits, and EDD's never heard of that person.
They don't have a record of that,
right? Because the employer's never been reporting this employee to EDD. The Center for Contract Compliance, which is a group that monitors public works projects, they'll often give us leads as to people that they believe are committing premium fraud and the associated frauds associated with premium fraud, EDD fraud, fraud against the Franchise Tax Board, that type of thing. And then insurance companies conduct random audits of their insured to determine, is your payroll and your classification and your experience modification, are those all adding up? And when they don't, when the audit shows that there's a discrepancy, then they'll refer the case to my office or to the Department of Insurance.
Now, these contractors that are using unlawful practices, we're talking about what they're doing to the customer. What are they doing to their own employees?
By not paying the workman's comp insurance, or defrauding them essentially, if something happens to that employee, the employees, they don't know any better. They don't know what insurance coverage these employers have. So if they get hurt, they expect to be compensated and have their medical bills taken care of through workman's comp. A lot of times these contractors, if they're not carrying it, they'll just pretty much write the guy off and say, see you later.
And we've actually had instances where an employer will drive an injured employee who may be an undocumented worker to the border of Mexico and give them $20 and say, go get help. It's really shocking, if you're an injured employee and you don't have the workers' comp, right. Also, the employees will not get unemployment benefits should they lose their jobs. The employees won't have accurate wage information if they wanted to get a loan for something. So cash pay hurts the employee more than I think they appreciate.
And of course, many times these contractors, employers, they're not paying any sort of health benefits to the employee. I mean, if they're not going to pay their workman's comp, we could assume they're probably not paying health benefits or possibly even a decent wage.
Right.
Now, what are some of the penalties that happen to these the contractors that are abusing the law, using unlawful practices?
Well, in California, we have a really strong enforcement tools for premium fraud. Unlike some states, it's not even a crime, or if it is a crime, it's just a misdemeanor. In California, we actually have 2 statutes, and they're felony charges, and you can receive up to 5 years in state prison. We also have what's called the white collar crime enhancement, which adds an additional 5 years onto your term if you defraud the insurance companies of over $100,000, which our cases are always over $1 million. So we can make that aggravated white collar crime enhancement fairly easy. That enhancement also allows us to freeze and seize property for purposes of restitution. So we'll take homes and boats and cars and that type, jewelry and that type of thing, and we can seize those assets until the case is resolved.
So initially, that's what you do. It would be one of the first things you would do.
Yes. Freeze bank accounts, seize property, that type of thing for restitution purposes. So those are all some really, good enforcement tools that we have in our toolbox, if you will, in California for premium fraud.
And typically, how long would litigation take?
They usually, it's hard to say, obviously it depends on the defense attorney oftentimes, but we usually are able to wrap them up within 6 months to a year, either through a plea or through trial.
Do you have any advice for the employees that suspect that their employer's not treating them right?
Yes. As far as I'm concerned, being on the labor side of things, I'd suggest that any employee, if you have any questions whatsoever, you could reach out to the building trades, either by calling the building trades or find a union that's specific to your trade that you're working on.
So they can go directly to the IBW
they can come directly
NECA.
to me, and or NECA, and we can help them out with whatever questions they may have. Mm-hmm. They may think something's a little wishy-washy and want to see what's being, how we can help them.
Now, Vicki, if they do suspect this, they've found out, well, I'm getting messed over here. Mm-hmm. Can they directly contact the district attorney's office?
Yes, we have on our website a complaint form that you can fill out and submit to our office, detailing what information you have that makes you suspect premium fraud. The Department of Insurance has a similar form on their website, and they also have a hotline, a fraud hotline. So there's multiple ways that you can report the fraud. San Bernardino District Attorney's Office has a hotline and a form as well to report it directly. They can also, I think the employees, if they believe they're being underpaid or there's kickbacks or prevailing wage fraud going on, the Department of Labor Standards Enforcement, they can report that to them as well. They're an arm of the state government that works more on behalf of the individual's employees' rights. We have, and I think Jim mentioned it, we have employers who require the employee to give kickbacks, especially in public works projects when they have to submit certified payroll. They'll submit the certified payroll establishing that yes, they're paying the employee what they're supposed to be paying, but then they take the employee to the bank and have them cash their check and give them a kickback of what was being paid. So that obviously is
right, obviously
a red flag.
And so he can just go right to the district attorney website, mm-hmm. or a phone call even,
right,
and report this.
Right. Another red flag too, I probably forgot to mention, is when the employee or the employer tries to discourage an employee from making a workers' comp claim. I'll pay for your medical bills. You don't need to make a workers' comp claim. They're not doing that out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing that because they've been committing fraud in some manner, and the employee obviously isn't going to be as well protected as they would be in the workers' compensation system.
They will also continue to pay their payroll too. Usually, mm-hmm. They'll just sit there and continue to pay them their payroll, so that way. And that's another form of cheating, because that contractor now, their insurance rating, as far as bidding jobs, it has to be at a certain level. Mm-hmm. If your number's too high, they'll either close their doors, reopen, or they do this where they'll pay out an employee, pay for him essentially to sit at home, so that way they don't get that claim against the contractor.
Right. Now this is premium fraud, but it's not perpetrated in a vacuum. So these contractors that are doing it, they're also committing code enforcement abuses. Mm-hmm. They're also committing other sorts of fraud, I'm sure. Right. As far as the IBEW goes, what is the customer, what's the business going to get for their money when they pay that little extra that these low bids that they're not going to get from these low bids? What are they going to get with the IBEW?
With the IBEW, I mean, by doing our due diligence, working with the DA's office to clean up the underground economy, the contractors that we have within the building trades, we do a professional install no matter what the trade is. You're going to get a good product. You're going to get a contractor that is not cheating. They pay all the correct insurances, they pay the prevailing wage correctly, and it's all monitored on both sides, on IBEW side and on NECA side. We monitor it so much to where we check the apprenticeship to journeyman ratios, because there are people that will cheat on that as well. They'll run high on apprentices so they can get their wages down. So you're going to get a good product from any of the building trades.
If I unknowingly hire one of these contractors, is there any sort of legal implications for me?
Potentially. Anybody who assists someone in committing a crime can be potentially liable for that crime. More likely we would apply that theory. It's an aiding and abetting theory to the people within the office. And that's one thing we try to tell people, if you're an office worker and you know that the employer is committing premium fraud and you assist that person by submitting the applications for insurance and things like that, or misclassifying the employees, you could be just as responsible as the employer. And you're obviously not getting the financial advantage that the employer's getting. So you're putting yourself on the line for really no gain to yourself.
What about the employer, as opposed to what the IBEW does for their employees and what these contractors are doing to theirs? How's the difference in that?
Oh, there's a huge difference. I mean, from the building trades side of things, everyone's always going to get paid correctly. They're going to get their money. They know they're going to have the insurance coverage. We monitor all that. We do compliance checks on all that stuff. With a contractor that's cheating the employee by paying them cash or by paying kickbacks, I mean, these employees need to realize that they're getting screwed. A lot of times they're afraid to report it because they're afraid of retaliation.
Is this abuse happening more at the homeowner level or at the business level? Is it happening in public works, with large businesses?
It actually occurs across the board. It occurs with public works projects like school districts, even the County of Riverside's projects. But it also happens with homeowners who the homeowner just hired someone to replace some drywall and there's premium fraud going on there. So it goes across the board as far as the building trades are concerned.
So we could say if it seems like it's too good to be true, then it's probably not.
Right.
And you do, with the homeowner, you do get what you pay for.
Yeah. I mean, if they're coming in real low on their bids, if it's a $10 million job and they're $1 million low, that's a red flag immediately. They're cheating somewhere on their numbers when it comes to public works projects. A lot of time pre-qual language says lowest responsible bidder. But a lot of agencies just see the lowest part and not the responsible part of it. And the responsible part's key. We try to educate different agencies, school districts about being a responsible bidder, because in the long run, even though that bid came in low, in the long run, they're going to be paying more for that project than they anticipated.
Well, thanks for being on our show today, Ms. Hightower
Thank you.
and Jim.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Premium fraud and other unfair business practices cost the taxpayer not only billions of dollars of lost revenue each year, but also affect the economy in countless other ways. Law-abiding contractors are often hard-pressed to compete with the low bids submitted by companies that will not stand by their work or their employees. But ultimately, it is the homeowner or business getting less than what they paid for that makes premium fraud an issue that cannot be ignored. At Energy Independence Magazine, we support the Riverside County District's Attorney's Office and their efforts in bringing these lawbreakers to justice. And we applaud the solid professional work offered by the contractors of NECA and the workers of the IBEW. I'm Sean Reynolds. Thank you for watching Energy Independence Magazine.